Let's get it started. Welcome back after lunch and after the marketplace sessions. And welcome to my talk about Terraform. And not only Terraform, but Terraform on day 2. So what do you do with Terraform on day 2? Now, before I start, a few words about me. I'm Christian. I'm one of the core contributors to the Terraform provider for SAP BTP, which is probably the reason why I'm here. And I love developer experience, developer productivity, and infrastructure as code is one way to bring developer experience and productivity forward. If you want to reach out to me, you see the links, email, LinkedIn, that's possible. Now, what will we be talking about in the next 60 minutes, I think, is where do we start? So what is our starting point for those day 2 operations? And then basically something that you heard several times now already this morning, namely, how do you treat this infrastructure as code? So how do you ensure quality? So take the as code seriously. How do you avoid situations where you have to write an email where you say, well, sorry, I made a little configuration change and now I destructed the production. And then maybe at some point in time, there are those folks who bring in requirements and they say, hey, do this and that. How can you keep things rolling out with Terraform without copy pasting, which is also an interesting topic in the Terraform area. Now, before I start, who of you knows about infrastructure as code? Just short sign. Oh, that's good. Who knows about Terraform and has used it? A lot of experts here. Cool. Then I can make this really short, which is great. But I will shortly wrap up so that we are on the same page. So what is infrastructure as code? That's a paradigm that says I want to provision and manage my infrastructure through code. So as I would do for app development, I do the same for infrastructure. And oh, that comes back. Yeah, I just had a little break. Yeah. Instead of manual processes. So in other words, friends don't let friends do click ops. That's the main point. If that's the only point that you take away with you today, I'm super happy. Then there is one other thing that infrastructure as code comes with, and that's infrastructure is, I would say, in nearly all cases defined declaratively. What does this mean? You say how the infrastructure should look like, but you do not tell the tool how to reach that point. You just say, for BTP, I want a sub account with label XYZ. I do not care at all how you get this thing up. And then there is one more thing. Because you don't do that on your own, you don't do that alone, you want to do things in a collaborative way. So the memory of what you have done with Terraform must be stored somewhere, and that's called state. And this state is usually stored centrally, it's encrypted, and helps you to collaborate and helps you to do things like delta changes. Now, what is Terraform? Terraform is just an instance of such an infrastructure as code tool. So it lets you exactly define, provision, and manage your infrastructure. And there are, I think, 2 myths around Terraform that I shortly want to address. Point 1 is Terraform doesn't care if you're in the cloud or on premise. Terraform just needs so-called plugins to interact with APIs. And if the infrastructure that you want to set up is on premise, Terraform doesn't care. So you can do very, very complex setups with that. And second one is Terraform is a multi-provider tool, which means you can combine several providers, like doing Azure combined with SAP or something like that. But that's not a prerequisite for using Terraform. You can do everything if you're just using one cloud. That's all fine. Now, of course, Terraform also keeps track of the real estate that you create via a state file. So you can determine changes, you can do drift detection, which is very interesting for governance aspects. And how does Terraform work? Well, Terraform basically has 3 steps. First, you write the configuration. Then you do a planning. So you ask Terraform, hey, based on this configuration, what will you be doing? And Terraform will tell you, hey, I will create that, I will change that, I will delete that. If you're fine with that, you apply the stuff. That's the last phase. So you bring the configuration onto the platforms and store what you did within the state. That's it. Now we are already one step further, right? We already built our Terraform configuration. So we made a setup of a SAP BTP account. We stored, of course, as its code, all the configuration within GitHub. The main branch of our repository is protected, of course, because we are good citizens. So whenever there is a change, a code review is required. Then the remote state backend is set up. So we store this state really centrally. In my case, it's an Azure Blob Storage. There are tons of backends that are available. And in order to automate things, I'm using, as I'm on GitHub, GitHub Actions as a CI/CD infrastructure. And because it's the only thing I know. That's all in place. That's all up and running. And now something happens. The first iteration of this setup was done by experts. So there was a POC. Folks had a lot of time to wrap their head around Terraform, about the maybe rough edges of Terraform, but they got things going. And now this should be handed over to a larger team, to an ops team. They have different levels of knowledge around Terraform. And now the question is, how can we support them? How can we make their life easier? How can we guide them on their learning journey? And how can we, on the same time, keep up the quality where we spend hours in order to make that configuration? So let's get things started. And let's move away from PowerPoint. OK, so we have the repository. We have the code stored in there. We have set up. This will be a long talk. It's back. So we have set up everything via a GitHub action, so via a CI/CD tool that is available on GitHub. So as you can see here, a lot of stuff happened. Now let's take a look what happened exactly. We use, of course, the great SAP BTP Terraform provider for setting up a global account. We have some variables in order to make things flexible with some defaulting. And for those of you who anyway know Terraform, that's nothing new. We have some local variables that you could define with some super fancy naming convention. We set up a sub account, and then we use a so-called module that you see here, which is a reusable building block. So think of that really as a module that can be used in several places in order to set up build code. We also have a backend configuration, as I said before. So we use kind of some information where the stuff is deployed also in our state file. We also use this in our sub account as label. So that's all there up and running, and we have our setup. Now, what will we do next? Folks are now starting to do changes, and we want to keep the quality up. What does Terraform offer to keep the quality up? So let's say somebody starts working on the project, and unfortunately he makes some typos, like forgetting the S. Formatting is also something that, well, who cares? You wouldn't do that within your programming language, right? You wouldn't do that within ABAP, JavaScript, no matter what. Now, the question is, can we support folks? Is there some tooling in Terraform that can help us? And yes, there is. So first things first, get the formatting right. There is one simple command, which is Terraform fmt for, guess what? Format. And of course, if I would type Terraform, it will also find it. So this one allows you to format the stuff. So I will go into the directory, and I will do a formatting. Remember, super weird. It even tells me what it formatted, and everything is in line again. So that's cool, right? So whenever somebody does a change, I, as a code reviewer, I don't want to check if the spaces are right, if the tabs are right, and so on. Format and save would be one option, but again, I want to make sure that that's within a CI/CD environment. So what I did is I just made a GitHub action that does exactly that. Do a Terraform format. If this action fails, well, guess what? You have to format the stuff and do another push to your branch. Now, we also made some typos here. Can we find them with Terraform? Yes, we can. Think about ABAP, syntax checks, static syntax checks, something like that's of course also available for Terraform. But for that, we have to first make an initialize, man, what a word, the setup so that the provider plugins get downloaded. And as we have a backend, I don't want the backend setup. That I don't need that. So I do this Terraform init, so everything is there for Terraform to do the checks. For example, to know this parameter here is called labels, not label. So then let's do a Terraform validate. That's how the command is called. And okay, there's an error. Sub account name. Okay, fair. Let's check that out. That's it, right? No, second label. Do you mean labels? Okay, yeah, I mean labels. And here we go. Let's check if the validation works. Yeah, success, configuration is valid. So what you should do when you write Terraform code, it's like in the old days in ABAP. I don't remember the shortcuts exactly. It was, I think, Control F2 and Control F3. So do a pretty print, do a syntax check. That's the same here for Terraform. It's code. Do a format, do a validate, everything is good. Of course, in order to make sure that everything is in place, I made another GitHub action, and as you can see, it's not really, as you cannot see, it's not really rocket science. You just have to bring that in via a few lines of bash code. Now, what about unit testing? Do you do unit testing? Of course you do. Who left? Who left? Yeah, it's only cowards who test. Chuck Norris tests in production. We don't test in production. So Terraform, I think, since 2 releases also supports testing. So what you can do is you can define unit tests and you can define integration tests. Unit tests would be something that is really tested locally. And you have all the nice stuff that you would expect from a unit test framework available in Terraform. So you can mock the provider. So that Terraform brings in all the values in some manner. Unfortunately, really in some manner. The sub account has an ID. This has to be a UUID because we checked that in the provider. So I have to override that. I can also override the module. So I say, hey, this module just give me back something. I don't care because it's a unit test. Then I take all the variables and make some assertions. And as I said before, we have this super fancy naming convention. And this is something that's important. So I want to test that. And what I do is a Terraform test. And if I would have been smart, I would have put all the tests in a folder called tests. I was not smart, so I have to do a test directory and called unit tests. And maybe we do that a bit more upward, right? What happens is Terraform runs the tests, gives you some output, does all the mocking. And this is now completely local because I just tested these local variables. So no connectivity to any platform needed. And that would also be my advice to do the amount that you could test locally within those unit tests. You can then also do integration tests that are remote. But this is really super powerful, especially also if you create those modules that I showed. Because for modules, you want to make some contract testing. You want to make sure that the stuff that comes in is what you expect. And this can also be done via these unit tests. Now, it's a quite new functionality within Terraform, so there are still some rougher edges maybe that you might stumble across, but it's continuously evolving, so everything's there. And of course, in order to have that automatically tests, because I don't want to test that manually by cloning the branch or whatsoever, I created a GitHub action that reacts on a pull request and executes the tests that are there. That's already good, and I guess you might want to see that in action, right? Not yet, not yet. So as you have seen, one thing is you do a lot of stuff, maybe depending on your changes with Terraform. So that's all the stuff that it tells you when you do a planning. That's now easy because everything gets created. But if you do changes, the plan might really be difficult to read, depending on how you did your setup, depending on your experience, but this could be tricky. And well, you say there is a code review, so somebody looks on that, makes a plan, 2 people look at that, and so on. Maybe your colleague had a bad day, maybe you had a bad day, and you say, hey, looks good. I know the colleague, that one's a good one. And then you have to write that email. Well, my HANA Cloud instance on production is not there any longer. But hey, I don't need coffee on that day because adrenaline is quite high. Now, the beauty about Terraform is that there is not only the Terraform ecosystem per se, but there is a huge ecosystem surrounding those Terraform offering. So there are a lot of other things that can help you with challenges that you come across. And to be honest, with SAP, we are not the first to the party of Terraform. I don't think that we are the last, but we are quite at the end of the queue. So there are a lot of problems that have already been solved. And one thing that could help you with making some educated guesses, is this change that you make something that is really breaking? Or is this okay-ish? There is a tool that's called Open Policy Agent. It's a policy-based control for cloud-native environments. It's a CNCF project, so from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Of course, it has then to be cloud-native, but it's a policy engine. So you define policies and you execute policies on files. Of course, it's quite used in the Kubernetes ecosystem, but again, it doesn't care if you are on-premise, if you're using Terraform or whatsoever. Now let's use this tool in order to do some, let's say, checks based on heuristics. And I prepared that because there is one thing about Open Policy Agent, and that's the language. It's called Rego. It's a language, and you can use it, but yeah, it has some kind of weird logic from my perspective. Now, having said that, what would we want to do? We have this Terraform plan. So all the information is there, what Terraform will do. All the creates, updates, deletes. And now let's say we give those changes some weights. We say a create is okay, a delete is maybe not so okay, a change, yeah, should also work. And the entities or resources that we care about are a sub account, entitlement, and a subscription. So those are these 3 colleagues. And we say, hey, delete, create, modify. We give different weights for that. And then we take the Terraform plan and basically multiply things out. So that's something that you can see here. I take the resource type, I take the number of delete operations, take the weight, multiply it, and that's it. And then at the end of the day, I sum everything up. And if the sum exceeds a certain blast radius, I like this word, blast radius. If it exceeds the blast radius, you probably have an issue. You should take a closer look at this configuration change, because maybe you mess things up. If it's below, looks okay. You should look at it, but hey. And that's basically it. And of course, we also create a GitHub action for that. Now that's a bit more of, I wouldn't say magic, but you have to do some things. First, you have to do a planning. And then you have to transfer this plan, which will be created as a binary, into a JSON format. And then you have to feed in this JSON into the open policy agent. Again, that's no black magic, no secret magic. Everything is documented quite well, but this is something that you have to do. And what you would do is you want to find out, is an automatic execution possible? So if the blast radius is below, and what's the score of my change? Because if I'm at 39, maybe I should take a very close look. Okay, then let's make a change, right? So let's add an entitlement. An entitlement should be super easy. If we add one, I should go to the policy if I want to take a look at that. Entitlement creation is a score of 1, so this should be easily applicable. So I changed that. I, of course, have to put that into a branch. I add it. I commit it. Of course, I take care for semantic commit messages. But we have no time. And then I create a pull request. I create that in the GitHub repository that you saw before. Title is fine. Body is edit entitlement. Something that you really like to read because that says nothing. And then we submit it. A new branch gets created. And let's take a look at that PR, because now things should happen. And as you can see, I made a pull request. The pull request triggered the checks, and the formatting check says, hey, something went wrong. So your formatting is not okay. So let's do a Terraform font. Yeah, the main was, so we have to bring that in. Fix format. But this is something that yeah, educates you to do the stuff in the right way without getting on your nerves too much. So I just pushed it right. So it should run again, hopefully. Yeah. Nevertheless, we can already take a look at the actions. At the first run, those went green. So the unit tests were okay. The validation was okay. Now let's take a look at the open policy agent. What happened here? Automatic execution is possible, true. And the score is, as expected, 1. So as you can see, with bringing together a few tools, you already get a quite good setup around the quality of your infrastructure as code, and really take this as code seriously. You have formatting, you have validations, you have unit tests, and you have some gatekeeping, I would say, around don't mess up production with OPA. And of course, there are commercial offerings out there. I'm showing you everything that is available today that is free. So no contact with SAP sales representatives. You can do that. But yeah, who doesn't like them, right? You can set the stuff up today, right after the session, if you want to. Not during the session, after the session. Where are we? So we have now done all this setup, all this quality assurance stuff, and we did some good work. The team is really good. Everybody's happy with how we set up the development environment. So we are here. on our BTP, and we have our account. Everything is fine. Now, as you saw before, this is the dev account, which makes sense for build code. So bear with me concerning the example. Now somebody comes and tells, yeah, cool. Now let's roll that stuff out. Let's roll it out to test. Let's roll it out to production. Maybe you want to do some sandboxing and add some services here and there. And now you say, how do I do that? I have my code here that's working. What options do I have? One option is with Terraform per se. I have the possibility to define so-called workspaces, which allows you to, let's say, switch between states. So you have one configuration, and you might have variables that you override depending on the workspace, and then a different state gets stored. So this way you can split this dev test prod thingy. And that's okay with the if you are on HashiCorp's cloud offering, to be honest. If you are with Terraform CLI vanilla style, it's not so cool. So it gets complex. You lose a bit control about things. That's not what you would do in a production environment. And then you have a second option, which is more the natural one. You have now one folder for your dev configuration. Why not do a second folder in the file system for test and a third one for prod? Anyway, you have some kind of different plans, some different kind of maybe services. And but 80% of the code is the same. So you do copy pasting, right? And this morning we heard one talk about DRY, don't repeat yourself. This is a lot of copy pasting, and you can bet that you will forget to copy paste things. So is there a solution that is cool and that allows you to also orchestrate all the stuff that you want to do? And yes, there is. Again, that's now really a bit of an advanced topic, but we are in day 2, so we have to deal with advanced topics. And even if your management tells you take out the complexity, make things more abstract, easier, complexity is there. You cannot get rid of it. But you can choose the right tooling to manage that complexity. And one thing to do that is Terramate. Terramate is another project that kind of wraps a lot of things that Terraform does and makes your life easier in complex setups. That was now a super abstract sentence. So what does it do in concrete? Terramate has one concept that is called stacks. A stack is one logical unit that you want to have within your setup. So in our case, dev test prod might make sense to be modeled as a stack. Now with Terramate, you create those stacks, and the beauty of Terramate is you don't have to learn another language. You use the HashiCorp configuration language that you just saw to do everything within Terramate. Now let's take a look how such a stack looks like. We will, in a few seconds, create one. But the main thing is this file here. That's a stack file. And what this file does is it gives Terramate the option to identify, hey, this is a stack. This has the name development. This has some tags in there. Now I have one with the stage. And this has an ID. I have the same here for testing, by the way. And with that, it allows you to do some fancy stuff around orchestration. But it does more, or can do more. So of course, what you could do now is, as a first step, copy over your stuff and just use the Terramate for orchestration. But that's not the full story. This naming of our files now looks a bit different, right? It looks a bit strange. Terramate generate underscore, what's that? Well, Terramate gives you the option to generate your Terraform code by using Terraform code. Inception. No, it's quite straightforward. So it allows you to use HashiCorp configuration language, as I said, to generate configurations. And what's the beauty of that? You can use all the stuff that you have within your stack. Yellow means good. And you can also add some other configurations, like you see here. Some informations. Maybe you want to have one provider version on test and prod. Maybe you want to have one provider version on dev. You can model that, and then you can react on that, like you can see here in the templates. In a second, probably. Here we go. To, in this case, fetch the first entry in the text. That's not super elegant, but for this demo, okay, and say, okay, this is kind of the key that I want to have for my backend configuration. We saw that before. We had the dev in there, and for example, for the test, we have the test in there. Now let's check how difficult it is now to create the production stack. So I will now go into the Terramate. I will say Terramate create. Then I want to have a stacks called production, and I want to have not yet the generation being kicked off. Okay, it created me a stack. Cool. So I have now a vanilla stack here. I want to take the tags, bring them over to this little friend here. And this I want to do PRD. And now, well, that's it. I do now a Terramate generate. And bam, it generated me a complete Terraform configuration, which is readable. It brought in those new tags, so I have a lot of flexibility in there without sacrificing the readability, which would be the case if I use more generic concepts. And I don't have any copy pasting, so I don't have a DRY issue because all the truth lies in the templates. Now, this is just one part of the story around Terramate. There's also one other thing. It allows you to orchestrate things. So as I said before, Terramate is just a wrapper. So usually you would say, hey, I want to do a Terraform apply. I want to apply my configuration. And you could do that by navigating into those single directories of the stack and do a Terramate apply. Cool, a Terraform apply. But you can also say Terramate, hey, Terramate, please take all the stacks that have tag dev or tag test or any other combination of that and execute this Terraform command on them. So this also makes your life easier when it comes to all the CI/CD stuff that that you have to work with, and that allows you to orchestrate stuff. So the readability is much more improved. You just have, I would say, less GitHub Actions than also to, or less CI/CD stuff that you have to implement. So that's all really, really cool. But as I said, that's really then kind of already some advanced approach. But it's good to know that something like that is out there. And as I already saw the yellow card, I switch to the last slide and say, first of all, thank you for attending my talk. And it's time for questions. There's one.
First of all, thank you very much for all these insights. You bring me homework for the next year now. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad that event is yearly happening, not 6 months even. But how you deal with that, let's say, learning curve on Terraform?
Mhm.
You know, because in the, let's say, old days, like the guy is not even clicking. The guy had a Linux prompt and he's used to that. And nowadays, the simple operator at night has to be a developer with 10 years of experience and so many cloud stuffs to learn. How you deal with this learning curve?
So as I said before, there is no shortcut. So there is no easy way, no shortcut to learn Terraform. So there is no magic sauce to that. From my perspective, what is important to understand as an organization is doing Terraform or doing infrastructure as code, no matter what. If it's Pulumi, Terraform, OpenTofu, no matter. You can bring in the knowledge that you have within your application development teams and infuse that also into your operations teams. So I don't say devs do now ops, but maybe it makes sense to really bring them together and discuss about the concepts. Because everything that you saw, it's exactly the same within application development. Also, the stuff with the stacks, that sounded super fancy, but when you think about application development, it's keeping things together. It's loosely coupled, high cohesion. That's exactly what's in these stacks. And this is something where I think the knowledge exchange makes your life easier as an operator. I mean, if there are folks that come from a very old world and are not open-minded, I mean, that's kind of a cultural organizational problem that, yeah, is there, and each organization has kind of to sort out for themselves. I'm sorry for that, but that's how it is. Mm-hmm. So I think now I didn't really get your question. So you have Terraform, you have a lot of tools around that. So I would start with Terraform per se. So really Terraform from HashiCorp or OpenTofu, which we don't officially support, but you can use it. And start from there. There is a lot of learning content there. And then it will be an evolution. So you will not hit the problems on day one. So you will create your configuration. You will adopt the best practices that are very well laid out within the Terraform documentation. And then at some point in time, you will see, okay, I think here I have to do something, here I have to do something. And then the beauty is you can do that really step by step. But I would really start from the Terraform core, so to say, and then expand to the other areas. And also, not everybody needs to be an expert in everything. So if you have folks that really know CI/CD, GitLab, GitHub, I don't know what, let them do that. They know how to call a CLI within such an thing, such an action, but they don't need to learn Terraform maybe. So that's kind of best advice I could give. And New Year's resolution is then to learn Terraform. Cool.
Maybe a stupid question. So what do we mean about day two? Is day one if the consultants are coming and doing the initial configuration of Terraform or a tool like this, and then day two is the normal day work of an operator?
Exactly. So on the usually, as far as I have seen on day one or when starting such projects, there are a few folks who do a proof of concept or something like that. There are a lot of experts who also have the time to wrap their head around this topic, are starting to lay out a configuration. Maybe they even bring in some advanced concepts, and then the usual business has to go on. And then this stuff will be handed over to the normal ops team. And then the fun starts. That's for me day two. Does this?
Very great, very informative, super nice. My question would be, what is your oh shit or your biggest oh shit moment or your biggest pitfall you ever had? And then you said, ah, shoot, why didn't I do this or that? So can you help us in accelerating our journey and not do the same mistakes over and over again?
In general or in Terraform? Okay, that's better. I think the most critical moment is to start too fast. What do I mean with that? So as you saw, Terraform is now no rocket science to deploy some first stuff into any cloud. CLI is super easy. Resources, you can do copy pasting a lot. There are tons of information out there. Now you might use some of that, but don't fully understand it. It works, cool. What should go wrong? And suddenly you have to understand what you just copied. So I would recommend if you learn Terraform, take the opportunity to really look into the details. I think that's not different for any learning of a programming language or whatsoever, even if you have Copilot. Try to understand what you're doing. And if you don't fully understand it, I mean, that's in general a good advice, but don't try to apply something that you did not fully understand. So for example, workspaces is a super example. Workspaces sound super fancy, and Terraform documentation is a bit of misleading here because you have the Terraform cloud offering from HashiCorp, which has workspaces that are super useful. And then you have the stuff that you get from the CLI, and that's a completely different ballgame. And if you don't understand that, you're fucked. Absolutely, no discussion about that. And this is something where you really have to go step by step. This is also something where I would recommend to start with POCs, to start with an expert team, and then expand from there and take the knowledge from there. And as I said, also take the knowledge that you have from application development.